We're talking about time and the life before 91, and that was a very different era for India. It's like a completely different world. The town I live in, Ghaziabad, was a really sleepy little railway town. And my father says that the main road, which was the main GT road, was so light on traffic that they would play cricket on it. Today it's unimaginable. There are at least 50 to 100 vehicles crossing any one point on that stretch every minute or every 2 minutes. And whereas earlier, maybe I remember that ours used to be practically the only car in town. Today, everybody has their Audis and Mercedes on the streets. In my childhood days, getting an ice cream was a challenge, but I think there weren't any in Ghaziabad. You had to go to Delhi to fetch one. And today, of course, you have a mall right in front of the house with McDonald's and Pizza Hut and everything. So it's a real sea change. I mean, in personal life, of course, there was the lack of choice as a consumer. You only had a few items and very few brands. And that was because every economic activity was very tightly licensed and controlled by the government. Producers were not just free to produce whatever they wished they wanted to. They had to take a license from a government body to produce anything. I belong to an industrial house myself, or a family which was in industry. And our main business for the last 70 years have been edible oils, particularly vanaspati and refined oils. And in those days, if you got a license, it was almost a license to print money, because essentially competition was restricted to other people who managed to get a license. There were always shortages, and that meant there was always rent seeking happening, profits to be made simply by producing something sometimes even of substandard quality. For the consumer, it was hell, hardly any choices, and also very few job options. Of course, entertainment was practically non-existent. You had black and white Doordarshan being in your house for just a couple of hours every evening, as opposed to the profusion of channels which you can barely even keep track of today. I remember that whenever there was a change in policy by the government, let's say liberalizing a license or allowing maybe 100,000 more tons of manufacture to be done in a particular industry, there would be a race to the ministry to obtain that license, and all the big industrial houses were vying for that very coveted license to expand their capacities. So clearly the system rewarded not those who were most efficient or perhaps best in terms of their quality. They were not the ones able to expand. It was always the ones who could wrangle a license. And finally, in that fairly esoteric circle of people who were industrialists and therefore had access to some licenses and perhaps were in on the game, it didn't matter which industry. The question was that if you had become rich, having had one license and created an industry which was printing money, then you wanted to invest in more such industry. And if it wasn't available in your particular field, then you chase whatever license was available in whichever field, because the story would not be very different. And so you had the odd situation where an edible oil manufacturing company like ours went into paper manufacturing, because suddenly paper manufacturing was liberalized, perhaps based on agricultural residue or whatever. There was some particular policy which allowed paper mills based on agricultural residue to come up, and suddenly that was an opening to invest. And we were one of those who invested in paper as an industry. But it was a very different experience then. It was a very exclusive club of people who were in industry. And if you look back, it's really odd. It's almost like the new Raja system, where the old Rajas were, of course, the ones who were blessed by the British with their kingdoms, and the new Rajas were the ones who managed to wrangle a license to produce something.